Nobody can force their way into my life and say, you must love me. It's like, nope. Women tend to do this because they kind of operate differently.
There's no medication for this. I shout at you until you do what I want you to do.
Yes.
If nobody cares about you growing up as a kid,
That's pathetic. Okay, look, all this touchy-feely stuff about, nobody loves you as a kid and, whatever, like, suck it up. Like, honestly, guys, suck it up. It is what it is.
yeah, you're done.
There's no point in having a conversation about love and attachment because it's actually going to be a detriment.
Welcome back to the I Wish You Knew podcast. I'm your host, Adam Lane Smith, the attachment specialist. With me is my good friend and co-host, Andrey Korikov. Andrey, welcome back.
Adam Lane Smith.
Good to be here. All right, today we are going to be talking about the number one most requested question from you guys in the audience. How do I tell when an avoidant man loves me? Biggest thing that you guys want to know about. Fortunately, we have an attachment specialist here in the house. We also have a recovering avoidant man in the house. We're going to be doing no holds barred, hard questions here today, back and forth, and we're going to shed some light on this very mysterious topic.
Yep, and for the sake of this conversation only, I'm allowing Adam hereby to lift some of the client confidentiality, because Adam and I have been working together for almost 2.5 years, I guess. And man, it was a story when I came into that session. It really was a good story. So this is such a topic that just boomed in the last couple of months for Adam. And I feel like a lot of people are in the same shoes as I have been, maybe worse, maybe better. But it's very important for us to really understand what it's like to be going through these challenges. So let's talk about it. Let's ask some questions, get into some nitty-gritty details. And let's help some people out with this, because it's a hot topic that many people don't know how to talk about.
Speaking of shoes, I always ask avoidant men, are those the shoes you wear when you sprint away from the relationships, or is those the shoes you wear when you get into relationships? Because they're nice. So
thank you. I appreciate it. No, first of all, they're the sprinting shoes, and they have to be well worn, and then you have to tiptoe in a relationship in them afterwards.
Understood.
That's right, and say nothing. They just have to be well loved.
This is why avoidant men own more shoes than any other group of men. I've noticed that. It's just a strange thing that's very true. Yeah.
Interesting.
You know what else avoidant men do?
What?
They love to groom themselves and look proper. Rugged Legacy Grooming Supply. It's good for avoidant men. It's good for healthy, secure men as well. If you want to get into a relationship and keep that relationship, you need to look and smell your best. Thank you, Rugged Legacy Grooming Supply, for supporting this wonderful podcast and giving us the chance to have this conversation.
Thank you, Rugged. It's what you want to use if you want to avoid problems.
Now, I want to draw a careful line here today, because all of the women who are in the audience, we want to give you the exact tools you need to understand if an avoidant man loves you, if he's playing games with your heart, if he's just here to destroy you. Most of them are not here to destroy you. Most of them are more scared than you are. It's like a bear. They're more afraid of you than you are of them. But I also want to come in very carefully, because avoidant men have a very dear place in my heart. Some of the best men in my life have been avoidant in the past or are avoidant now. And I don't want to throw labels at anybody and make anybody in the audience feel like there is something deeply wrong with you. This is a video that people can watch together as a couple. Right? This is not a dissection of a diagnosis. This is talking about men who are living with a specific behavior pattern that has served them well, that has kept them safe from anybody who would do them nefarious harm. And I want to talk about how we can open that up in a relationship into a loving way.
Yeah, I want to challenge this notion of like continuous labels. They say you are avoidant and that's it. Yeah. And you're now labeled as somebody who damages other people, who doesn't love, who cannot feel these things. What people have to understand is that life goes in cycles, right? And we have our cycles for building relationships, for building ourselves, for testing relationships, for testing ourselves. And there's many different patterns that you pick up. And it's not really a question of whether or not these patterns are good or bad. It's whether or not they serve a particular purpose, right? The service of a purpose and what that purpose is really defines the context. I've been in many situations in my life where the more avoidant patterns where you're not really getting too attached and you're really using more like your logical side of your brain to solve problems, to build relationships, to grow vasopressin bonds have been very beneficial to myself and others. I've been in many situations in my life where not going into a connection and holding myself back from relationships was actually a very important and useful thing for other parts of my life. There's a very common mistake that people have, and they assume that you need to be in relationships all the time, that if you're not dating, something's wrong with you, and then if somebody displays affection towards you, that you're obliged to return it in some way. And it's completely false, because your life will have seasons. As you go through the seasons of your life, you can completely absolve yourself from relationships. And it's your right. And I can be a damn avoidant for as long as I want. I understand as long as it doesn't hurt people, but nobody can force their way into my life and say, you must love me. It's like, nope.
And that right there is the heart and soul of the avoidant attachment and the label, so to speak. You asked me recently, Adam, why didn't you tell me I was avoidant? Right? I didn't bother telling you why you were avoidant for a long time.
What else didn't you tell me?
Well, that's a good question. Ultimately, though, let's skip past that. Ultimately, an avoidant person doesn't really need to carry a label. They don't need to hear, you are avoidant. What they need to hear is, hey, you know what? Are you happy in your life? Have you been happy in your life? Do you like the distance between you and other people? Do you like the freedom? And most of them do. Do you like the feeling of nobody being able to tie you down or make arbitrary demands of you? Yeah. Do you like the feeling maybe of being lonely and feeling like you're on the outside looking in all the time? Maybe not all the time. Maybe not as often. Do you like the feeling of, at 6 or 7 months in a relationship, losing that connection feeling to the other person and not knowing how to carry that forward, maybe into a full, intimate bond?
I feel like those are loaded questions. What are you getting at?
Yeah.
What are you getting at? Come on. Cut the crap. Let's go.
No, so avoidant attachment is a survival adaptation for if nobody cares about you growing up as a kid, or you feel like nobody cares about you.
Okay, look, all this touchy-feely stuff
Sure.
about, nobody loves you as a kid and,
Sure.
whatever, like, suck it up. Like, honestly, guys, suck it up. It is what it is. Probability is your parents loved you, and probability is, there's probably some challenges in their life that they've experienced where they couldn't be there for you in the same way that you might have needed. And it happens, things happen, we grow up, and really the mentality, we had this one of our recent guests, and he said, it stops with me. Like, it stops with me in the sense of, hey, everything happens for a reason. People become avoidant for a reason. Sure, it's an adaptation mechanism. I believe it's very dangerous for men to be caught up in their emotions. Mm-hmm. Self-pity. Really sitting there and disaggregating how you feel and why and whatnot is dangerous. Complaining is the most dangerous thing you could be doing to your brain, because what you're doing is you're coding in a reality which is consisting of you being a victim. Things are being done on to me. I've not been loved as a child. I've not been taken care of. People are not making me feel safe. It's like, no, this is just the way things work sometimes. And what you can do is, sure, you can continue passing on these patterns, but instead what you can do also is to simply take the time, take the space to fix yourself, and then also then down the line, start learning how to experience proper relationships. So a lot of these times, this avoidant nonsense, it's like, well, what do you expect from us? Like, do you expect us to just be able to like get up and say, oh man, okay, you're so right, I'm so avoidant. Come give me a hug and let's run through a field of bunnies while singing out loud. It's like, it doesn't work like that, guys. Doesn't work
unless you upgrade to the bunny field package. Then it can work.
You have that?
I do.
Ooh, how much is that?
Bunny field package. No, and nothing you're saying is wrong. I will say this: nothing that you're saying is wrong. Avoidant attachment is a very, very common sense approach to a world where people are going to be tough. People have trauma. People don't have time for your crap. People don't have time for your feelings. And it will help you survive. It will help you grow. That lone wolf survival mentality will make you a great executive, a great business owner. And
that's what you value as a society. You tell me this.
In America, for sure. That we definitely value that.
Everywhere you grow up, men say men need to be tough.
Yep.
Men need to get their stuff done. Mm-hmm. Men need to go and provide for their families, and that is their primary purpose. Everywhere in the world, this is what you tell us, and then afterwards, when we do it, people complain.
Well, and what men also need to do is to be able to provide that connection point, that attention, that focus, that bonding for their children, for their wife, for the people under them. Leadership is not just I yell jobs at you. Leadership is I'm able to take you in, I'm able to listen to you, guide you, empathize a bit, and then redirect you onto a better path. Not just I shout at you until you do what I want you to do.
Yes, so I really like this point, right? So you can see that I'm, Adam, I'm challenging you, and I'm challenging you because this is a very common conversation that people have. I like to model this conversation. We have had this exact conversation, and I have challenged you many times in the past to really understand what is this about. Because as somebody who prefers to get stuff done, I don't want to call myself, I don't avoid anything. I'm dealing with things that are as they come. Life has given me challenges when it came to business, when it came to relationships, and I attempt to learn as fast as I can, going as fast and as far as I can, and to adjust and adapt. So this is a great point, and we talked about this a lot. You may be experiencing kind of a bit of a ladder effect, like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs situation, where until you can provide for your safety, your food supply, what else is in there? What's the hierarchy? Remind me that.
The basic structures of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah. So food, water, shelter for the night is like basics. I'm not going to die in the forest. Above that is safety and security. Okay. More longer term. Okay, now I'm settled in. I have 4 walls. I have a roof. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to get sick and die. No one's coming with a gun. Safety and security. Above that is love and belonging.
Okay. So until the bottom 2 are organized.
Yeah, you're done.
You're done. Like there's no point in having a conversation about love and attachment because it's actually going to be a detriment, right? So you have this ladder effect of priorities that you have to sort out as a man. And eventually what happens that as you start moving from the second stage into the third stage, the security is established, yes, you actually will be confronted with a requirement to learn and adjust your nervous system into something that's a little bit more sustainable.
And here's why. And I've never really loved the title of avoidant attachment style, because what you just said was, I don't avoid anything. Like I head into it, I face it. And avoidant men have guts and courage. They are the ones usually leading the way, and they're designed to be that way. It's much more like a lone wolf survival style. Lone wolf attachment style is what the guys are, oh yeah, they can flex as they diagnose themselves with it. But that is very much exactly the point, is those bottom 2 levels, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Basic survival for today, and then shelter and safety, all right? Security and safety right above that. Guys with lone wolf mentality, they get stuck in those 2. And they can have, some of my guys come in with 10 mil in the bank. They come in with a thriving business that they've built. They're C-suite execs and global corporations, and they should be arguably up here, but they are convinced that someone's going to come along and take away their level 2. They are always at level 2, safety and security, because they never feel connected.
I do not believe that they're convinced that somebody's going to come in and take that away. I believe that they simply may experience a thought pattern where they feel like they cannot provide or protect it, right? So that doesn't mean that, hey, there's going to be a woman in my life that shows up and she's going to claim everything, and I'm going to be left bare, and like she'll take the clothes off my back and I'll be strapped to the bed and nothing will, nothing can be done about that. Look, everybody's into all sorts of stuff. Okay. So it often when people talk about attachment and they say it's like avoidant attachment people are afraid. They're not necessarily afraid. They're feeling much more responsible, saying, if I cannot protect you and myself at the same time, if I cannot feel I can provide for you, we're simply not going to enter in that relationship. The fear isn't of the other person. The fear is of the ability to consistently provide for them and also to not fail them. Right? Failure is often a thing that's been kind of a cause of avoidant attachment relationships. Failure in past relationships, failure in families, failure in experiences. And we're protecting ourselves and people we love from failure.
Okay. You are describing a main element of avoidant attachment style. One big piece, though, that I'll disagree with you in there is fear of other people. It is an element, and it doesn't have to be a conscious fear, like, oh no, I am afraid of my girlfriend. It doesn't have to be, I think she's going to come in and hit me with a bat, right? It's not lame. These guys don't have, loser mentality of just wandering around cringing at every word somebody says. But what they are troubled by is this belief that when the chips are down, nobody else is going to be self-policing, moral, ethical, honest, fair. Their belief is that when the stress hits, other people will become arbitrary and will never rein themselves in. So there must be safety guards to protect against other people. Now, yes, other people get stressed out. The belief here is that other people are going to completely collapse into that stress, and only the avoidant person is going to be able to hold everybody at bay, that they have to do that through leverage. Again, not usually manipulation. It's not a crazy sociopathic power struggle. It is, I cannot trust anybody else when the chips are down. I can only trust myself. So letting somebody too far in, I fear that. I do fear the vulnerability that will bring. I do fear the liability that will create for us. This is why a lot of avoidantly attached men, when you start talking to them about marriage, they have a list of things they must accomplish before they can get married, and usually finances is right at the top.
I see both sides. I see both sides because many people do not understand what it is actually like to build a life that can protect and provide. You're not in the shoes every single day. You're not getting the cash flow, the legal issues, often even the physical dangers, the emotional stress that comes with some form of success. People make the mistake of thinking that making money is easy. People make the mistake of thinking that achieving things in life is easy, but everything comes with a price. What goes up must come down. And the world is built on rules and consequences. So often, especially when people are coming in, and women tend to do this because they kind of operate differently, and they operate in a little bit of a different societal structure as well, they often assume that if we don't talk about feelings and emotions and stresses and challenges, they aren't there. In fact, the biggest challenges that we experience are the ones we talk about the least. Because, again, the more you complain, the more you share that vulnerability, the worse of a reality you're creating in your own head. So we usually will take the worst parts of our day, hide them, bury them deep, deal with them separately. We have our own ways. But the things that are lighter and easier we bring to the table in discussions and relationships and marriages, whatever. And then it often creates a false idea. Right? If it creates a false idea that what we're experiencing is easy, that making money is easy, that having these relationships is easy, and we're just sitting there being like, no, I'm scared of commitment. It's like, you have no idea what happens in the day-to-day, right? And when we say, no, we're going to be careful and we're going to be smart, it's because we've seen people go out of business. We've seen people hurt themselves. We've seen people hurt other people. We've seen people get sued into oblivion. We've seen kids kicked out of homes. We've seen families fall apart. We see all this horrible stuff and we say, I don't even want to tell you about it. And then people say, oh yeah, you're afraid. I'm like, damn right I'm afraid. I'm afraid of this happening to you. I'm afraid of this, of me not being able to protect you from having this happen. And I'm afraid for good reason, which is why I'm being responsible. So this idea of fear, you want to talk about fear, that's fine, but let's also link it to some form of responsibility. How are avoidant men actually responsible? Are they even responsible?
That's the question. And that's why they call it avoidant. They are avoiding the liability of full commitment and responsibility. Typically. Not always. Every avoidant man is his own person, and I'm not going to sit here and say every avoidant man is, boom, exactly cookie cutter like this and runs away, because they would never get married. What I will say is the fullness of responsibility when they join into a marriage, they feel that fullness of responsibility upon themselves because they don't believe anyone else is capable of taking on that responsibility. Again, they fear the weakness in other people.
Sure. And then there's a whole school of thought, biblical especially, that a man must lead a relationship, that a man must lead lead and manage his family, and he must take ultimate responsibility for his family in front of the world and of God. So it is programmed into us to not assume that anybody else is going to step up and pick up our failures, that our failures are going to be our own, and that is only our responsibility to prepare for them in advance.
But that's the distinction there, is that the avoidant man will take for granted that nobody else is ever going to step up and accept their failures and be self-policing and responsive. This is why avoidant attachment only is fixed. It's not fixed like, okay, we're going to give you medication. There's no medication for this because it's not a medical issue.
Oxytocin to the neck.
Yeah, you just inject right with a syringe, just attack him from behind the couch. No, there's no medication for this because it's not some medical issue. The issue here is a fundamental inexperience with trustworthy human beings. Not, I will turn over all control to you and feel better by surrendering myself into your care. It is, can I have one or two people in my life that I can believe won't be perfect, but they will be trustworthy. When the stress hits, yes, they may go a little bit off, but then they will bring themselves back. When there's a challenge, I can tell them about it, and they will step forward. Can I trust human beings? The fundamental answer here is no, I can never trust anyone. And that's what leads into this disordered sort of behavior and thinking, is I can never trust anyone, anywhere, ever.
Yeah, but that's an absolute, okay? Yeah, so basically...
That's the problem. The absolute is the problem.
I believe the absolute is probably only present only in a small fraction of men. I don't believe that this is a lifestyle and a worldview in which they live constantly. Yes, I can feel myself shifting into that every once in a while, but again, I've been on this journey for about 2 years.
2.5 years, yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 years. I've been working with a fantastic professional. I'm really looking kind of from way further down, but even reflecting on my own journey, I can say, there were never periods of my life where I believed that entirely for any type of length. Like, it's not like I spent the years being like, nobody will ever love me and I'm all alone and nobody's to be trusted. That's a very extreme worldview. I could have seen myself going through oscillations of that. I could see myself
during times of stress, really specifically.
During times of stress, yeah. Yes.
So when the stress would hit, that's when your attachment style would really come out.
Yeah, and this really, as you can see, it really spikes me up here because people come in and say, "Well, you always think like this." It's like, no, I don't. No, guys, like, what the hell? I don't always sit there and think about how people are gonna betray me and screw me over. That's pathetic. No, I have hopes and I have dreams, and I'm just being cautious. Sometimes there's certain triggers and behaviors, and I like to talk about these. There are certain triggers and behaviors that really kind of make me put my guard up.
Sure.
But often these things are down. I'm open to communication. I'm open to relationships. Yes, I'm more cautious with them, but it's not like I'm sitting there saying like, oh, I'm never, gonna love again, And this is a big part of demonizing of men who have this type of mentality, who have avoidant attachment, who are hyper focused on, responsibility and accomplishment, who maybe don't know how to climb to that third level of the Maslow's hierarchy. But it won't help telling them that they are the constant problem. I think understanding the problem, understanding the fact that this is a floating belief, that it's something that is triggered not by choice, but maybe by some form of learned behavior, that there is maybe a biological component. This is the point where, your amygdala kicks up. You're the scientist here, like you tell us about that, but really understanding the component that actually causes this, and more importantly, how to step out of that.
So, a man who grows up in a loving family system, and I say loving as in they care for each other, especially during difficult times. They help each other through challenges. Men in those structures will be initiated into something called vasopressin bonding. Okay. Men have more receptors for vasopressin than women do, far more receptors. We are designed to bond through that. That's how male rituals have existed throughout all of human history. In every culture, we have male bonding rituals, especially initiation into manhood. There's an element of stress. You overcome it, but by doing so, you also overcome it with the rest of the tribe. You join with the rest of the tribe. You vasopressin bond to the men. Mm-hmm. That's specifically how we're supposed to be initiated into this. Now, what we've got largely is a culture of men, and especially men who end up with the label of being avoidant, who end up with those behaviors. They did not receive vasopressin bonding as a child. They weren't shown that when you receive cortisol that floods through your system, when you are stressed, other people can be counted on to assist you practically in resolving that stressful situation. That's what this comes down to. Instead, what they typically learned was if other people are involved and if other people have input on it, other people will become stressed out, other people will release their own cortisol, and then will make the situation harder at your expense. This is where that fundamental difficulty in trusting other people comes in.
I like this a lot, right? So the idea that other people will become failing points, and they will become failing points for you to take responsibility and accountability for is key. Again, I want to keep challenging this idea that avoidant men are afraid. It's like, no, they're hyper responsible. They say, look, I'm going to introduce you to my life. We're going to run into challenges. You're going to break. And in the middle of me having a challenge, I'm going to now have to come back and take care of you, possibly destroying us both. Why would I lead you there?
And you said something in there, hyper responsive, and that's so true. People have this wrong idea. Women who love avoidant men have this wrong idea that he's not paying attention, right? The actual term for avoidant is dismissive avoidant, that he is dismissive of you. And I hate that.
You think that's problems?
And
Let me show you problems.
I refuse to ever use dismissive avoidant because the vast majority of men I've worked with are not dismissive at all. They are actually hyper attuned to the smallest changes in the home, to the smallest tone in somebody's voice. They are very tuned in to everything.
I was
in their
anxious. I
environment.
thought that would be the anxious.
Anxious does this as well, but anxious does it from a perspective of what does it mean about me? How do you feel about me? Avoidant men are hyper attuned to their environment at all times, which is fascinating. Not from a, oh no, I'm scared or someone's mad at me, but constantly scanning for threats. Because again, with low or no vasopressin bonding, the assumption there, the default assumption is no one will ever help me resolve stress. So I have to be aware of stress at all times to catch it myself. I read a fascinating research paper that was published about 12 years ago talking about how avoidant attachment may actually be a functional adaptation that could be helpful for the rest of the group. So let's say, take it back 20,000 years, hunter-gatherers, we're all wandering around with sticks and we're trying to hunt and gather and do various things. If you are in an environment where somebody is raised, low vasopressin bonding, hyper-attuned to safety parameters, hyper-attuned and believing no one else is going to really help them, that they are alone are fully responsible, then if they do join a group, now that group may benefit from having someone who is hyper-attuned to all those scanning for threats.
Look at every heroic epic. Look at every piece where, you know, the true masculine self is revealed. They're not touchy, huggy, feely, you know, let's sit there and talk about our feelings. They're like the guy who like smells the dragon from like 25 miles off, and while everybody is like celebrating, he's like sitting there sharpening his weapons, being like all doom and gloom, and everybody is like, why, Jorge, are you doing this? And he's like, because the end is near. And then he goes and battles the dragon, saves everybody, and everybody is like all kumbaya, and then like 2 months later they'll go back to the same nonsense, and like, why is Jorge so dumb?
Well, now I don't disagree, but here's the challenge. In that circumstance, he needs to be able to form functional bonds enough with his community. Number one, for them to benefit from this, he needs to form enough of a bond with them that they are worthy of his time and investment. Otherwise, he'll smell the dragon, wander off quietly into the woods, and the dragon will come eat them as his decoy while he goes and lives alone in the forest.
That's psychopathic. That's weird.
but even if they just don't form a bond with him at all, he can simply leave. But number two, if he fails to form authentic, real leadership with them where they trust him, where they don't just trust him as their horrifying taskmaster of you will go over there and do what I say, but if they desire to trust him, right? And we see this, for example, in the chimpanzee troops with their highest level leader. He needs to not only be the strongest and most dominant, but they're also the most likely to comfort another one. They're the most likely to stop a fight by settling it with the other chimps. They're the most likely to nurture somebody who's crying, but also charge into battle.
So here's the biggest problem, man. Here's the biggest problem. You're not letting us do that. I mean, I would...
Me, personally?
No.
The women.
Sometimes.
So we're talking about maybe the women who love avoidant men who are.
I'm
maybe
talking
questioning
about
them.
two things.
Okay.
I'm talking about the fact that many times the women are now stepping into their masculine and they're trying to act in a way that is going to hurt them. They're trying to jump into male relationships without understanding anything about male psychology. They're trying to jump into very many male responsibilities without being prepared. And they are not only just likely to hurt them, but they're also they're not only just likely to hurt themselves, but they're also likely to hurt us. And they're not letting us step in and help. They're not letting us step in and teach. Even saying something like, oh, hey, can I help you with, I don't know, taxes? No, I got to do this myself. I was like, and are you qualified? And they go, how can you ask me this? Because I'm a woman? It's like, no, it's because you've never done this before. And the same thing applies to everything else. Electrical work, like women are trying to do a lot of things and I respect them for it, but you cannot do so carelessly, especially if somebody else loves you. So that's point number one. And point number two is society. You're coming after us, guys. Like society is coming after men taking responsibility. They're coming after us for taking leadership roles. They're coming after us for being protective. And then because you're coming after us, after that, you're coming back and you're saying, oh, why aren't you trusting me enough? It's like, because you're acting belligerent. Because you're not letting me help. You're not letting me fulfill myself. You're not letting me be my masculine self. You're trying to step on my toes and you're yelling at me for things that aren't working. What the hell do you want me to do? So yes, of course, men back up and they say, you know what? You run around, and when you're done running around and you've caused yourself your problems, then I can step in with my unspent resources within my not ruined nervous system, and maybe I can help you when you're ready.
This is why research indicates that anywhere from half to 1/4, somewhere in that range, of men are what we would consider avoidant. It's a pretty growing problem. It's a massively growing problem. And more women are avoidant as well. It's not that, again, you have a diagnosis and some horrible label and you're broken and you're never going to work. It's what are you adapted to? If you're adapted to hardcore survival, you're adapted to lone wolf sort of structures, cool. And then the problem I have with most of my coaching executives who come in with me, they've climbed through the ranks. They're at the C-suite up at the top. They're at these amazing corporations, or they've built these great companies, but now they can't maintain. They don't know how to maintain the relationships at those levels. The leadership pieces aren't there. The connection pieces aren't there.
So it's more of a self-improvement thing.
It is. Yeah, this is you have climbed to this point. Let's get you now to a place where you can maintain and enjoy and then embrace the new opportunities.
So I like this a lot better, right? So let's again come back to this discussion and this discourse that's happening on your channels all the time, in the general community, in the digital space, where everybody's coming out after avoidance to say, you did this, you are afraid, you don't know. And it's like, you know what? When you build a company, when you grow a business, when you are able to maintain your health, when you're able to take care of your friends, when you're able to help society as a whole achieve things, a functional company does tremendous good for society. It gives people jobs. It gives people the ability to grow. It protects them. Like, you try doing that. When you've done that, then you can come and talk to me. And then you can tell me what I'm doing wrong. But not until then, because until then, it's like, I'm sorry, you're just having a tantrum. And as cute as that is, I have stuff to do. And I'll go do that while you calm down. So honestly, when people come to me and they criticize me for, accomplishing things in life, and they just point fingers and blame, I say, dude, you haven't done anything, or girl, you haven't done anything. What right do you have to judge me? In fact, why should I even care about spending my seconds of time, my minutes of time? Because it's so, it's so expensive. Every minute I'm not spending working or training or taking care of something is a minute lost if I'm not using it productively. You're wasting my time. You're attacking me. You have done nothing of value. You have no base to teach me on. You have no respect, and I have no respect for you. So what the hell are we doing? But when people do come back and they say, hey, you have worked hard. You're not perfect. I understand that, but I understand the fact that there's intent, and I respect that. I would like to help you learn something more. I will help you learn how to be a better leader by inspiring and understanding and connecting with people more. I like that. Okay, that makes sense. That has value to the community I'm trying to protect. And secondary to me, not because like, oh yeah, I want to be in love and, burn the company down. It's like, I can sell now and I'll be fine. And you won't be, which is why I'm not. So if you can tell me how to take care of this group of people better, I am interested. If you can say that is going to make you a better human, I'm interested. But it cannot be from the perspective of like, screw you, you're imperfect, I need to fix you. It's like, fix yourself. So I do not like people coming in and giving avoidant people flack. Why should you not, A, start your life off as being avoidant, and then B, learn how to be properly attached maybe when you're 20 or 30, so you can spend your life actually fixing things that need to be fixed without caring about your feelings, being responsible. And when you're ready, as was kind of the case, and for many centuries before this one, where, men would get married in their 20s, late 20s, 30s, with, yes, younger women, so that it was a little bit biologically more aligned, but while they were mature. While they weren't 18, 19, 20-year-old jerks running around being fools that haven't done nothing of value for society, nothing of value to themselves, why should we not start as avoidant and then as a next step, teach a proper secure attachment once we've actually done something?
Sounds to me like you're saying that avoidant attachment can be a good thing.
Damn right it could be a good thing.
I actually don't disagree.
Really?
If it wasn't a good thing, it would not have survived in our evolutionary code. It exists for a very key purpose, and there's a big reason that at least 25% of the overall population, and perhaps largely men in that portion, are having avoidant attachment right now. It's the thing that allows a society to rebuild from the rubble. It's the thing that allows a family to rebuild once it's been wiped out and there's no resources. Avoidant attachment is enormously helpful, and again, the research proves this, is enormously helpful for rebuilding from absolute horrible conditions. It is designed for that. Yes. Also, it is designed to help build companies. Yes. Also, it is designed to help move forward. Absolutely.
And it's also designed to protect. There's a lot of, women listening right now, I'm sure, who may be in relationships with avoidance, who may be very frustrated avoidance. I understand. Girls, I get it. This is a very frustrating experience. You're craving a connection. You're craving a relationship. You want me to be glued to you 24/7, to never leave your side, to never leave, bed just except to feed you and nurture your children. Life doesn't work like that, okay? It doesn't.
Now let's talk about this, though. Let's talk about the pathways that open up when you have avoidant attachment and the things that are missing. So biologically, what you're missing is things like oxytocin. It's called the love hormone. But what it really is the hormone that releases when you feel accepted in low stress situations by a tribe that cares for you.
Yeah.
Okay, this can be other men. It can be your wife. It can be your child. Other people care for you. When you have that, you release something called GABA, G-A-B-A. GABA releases a tremendous number of things in your body. One thing it does is allow for efficient use of magnesium so that your muscles can start to relax, so that they can let go.
To what point?
So that you can feel, number one, healthier, and number two, sleep better at night. If you have somebody who will watch over you while you're sleeping, you can then sleep, and then you can get better rest, and your brain chemistry refreshes, your memory improves, your cognitions improve the next day, your spatial reasoning improves.
Why can't I just take a shot of oxytocin right to the brain, call it a day, wake up, and work my 16 hours?
And we have some of that, and it doesn't seem to be as effective as the relationship.
What do we have? What's simulated version?
Well, we have a variety of things. Pitocin is one specific thing that we use to induce labor.
Let me turn this down.
we do have oxytocin. You can have a spray of oxytocin up the nose, for example. But it doesn't achieve quite the same cocktail that we're experiencing. So what you're looking for is that oxytocin, that GABA, again, vasopressin. The vasopressin is enormously important.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so let's have a scenario. I'm in the middle of building a company. I'm in the middle of a big, sales push. I'm an engineer. I'm in a construction project. I'm in a training protocol.
Sure.
I am zeroed in. I am focused. My day's time by the minute. I am tracking relationships. I'm tracking progress. I'm what I'm assuming to be the dopamine and cortisol cycle.
Yep, pathways.
And then I had a hug, and I spent a day in bed with my loving wife, and I can't remember anything. All of a sudden, I'm like losing track of things. The world is beautiful. That's fantastic. And Joe just got crushed by a brick, and then Frank just got eaten by a lion, but that's okay because God loves everybody and whatnot. And that is kind of the feeling you get. And then everything you've built starts crashing down. And the person who's lying there hugging you all of a sudden goes, "Why did you do that?" And they go, "I don't know."
That's not how it's supposed to work if you've built it right and properly. That's not how those pathways work. Here's what actually works is you get those brain chemicals, you improve your serotonin, you sleep better at night, your memory quality actually goes up. Okay, your performance goes up. It is supposed to. Yes, could there be a phase where you are essentially drunk on some of these at the beginning? Yes, and I know that you experience, and that's what you're pushing on is the times where you feel like you lose your edge temporarily.
Or lose myself.
Lose self.
This is a big point for us. You know, we've gotten this far. Sure, we're going to immerse ourselves into this, and I'd love to. Like, women especially do not understand how desired it is for us to allow ourselves to experience this cocktail of emotion, to experience proper love, to experience a proper connection, to, you know, for me, like, I'm divorced, I have a kid, and then we spend a lot of time alone with the kid. And when she goes back to her mom's, you know, she was my only source of serotonin and oxytocin for quite a long time. And the anguish of losing that, even though it's a tiny kid who has a lot of problems, and I'm not saying problems in the sense of problems, I'm saying, you know, she needs to be watched and played with and, you know, entertained, and it's very different from my regular brain chemistry. Like, it's very difficult for me to adjust to that. So she, to me, is, of course, has a big obligation, and I love her to death, and I'll do anything for her, and I've structured my days in a way where she gets everything she needs. She gets the love, she gets the attention, especially after working with you, Adam. And that was a godsend because she's growing up to be a happy, healthy kid and not with my problems. But she's my source of serotonin. So when she goes back and she's not in my vicinity, the suffering and anguish that happens on the biological, biochemical, psychological levels is immense. And, you know, when people go and say, "Well, you were afraid," I was like, screw you. You have no idea what it's like to live without it. And we do it for a reason. And the feeling is unbelievably painful. It's not like we don't want it. But I know that in order for me to get to the point where we can have a lifestyle where this is consistent and relatable, then I'll let myself feel that. Then this actually why I just entered into a relationship myself, because after 2.5 years of work and building and, you know, a tremendous amount of luck, I was actually able to step into that. Many guys are not. Many guys are still in the building stage, which is why they have a checklist.
Well, and I got plenty of guys that come into me in their 50s, 60s. I even have guys come in their 70s who have been avoidant their entire life. Their entire life been purely avoidant, not manipulative, not taking from other people, but everything that you've described, okay? Dopamine, cortisol pathways, very little of anything else. Some top performers in the world, people that are, you know, upper levels, and people say, "Wow, that guy has everything together," until he experiences a gigantic crash. Now, it could be a scandal that he foolishly jumped into because he was starving for affection, and after 50, 60, 70 years, gave in to somebody who was very manipulative. It makes you enormously vulnerable to the people who are excessively manipulative. The biggest predators tend to come after the avoidant men the most.
Really?
At highest levels. Absolutely. To try to rob them of cash. The guys that are afraid of the overwhelming manipulative sociopathic gold digger model, these guys are afraid of them, and they're the ones who excel at getting you addicted to them biochemically. I've
so
seen
basically
that
what
you're
saying, and I really want to dig into this point, what you're saying is that by committing yourself into this cycle of avoidance, even if it's for good reason, you know, protecting your future, protecting your children, protecting, you know, your group, your tribe, you're actually making yourself vulnerable.
Well, you're not just making yourself vulnerable, you're going to make yourself sick. So a lot of these men who excel and push and grind, when they hit their 50s, 60s, and 70s, they experience a number of things. So when you have high cortisol in your system all the time, not regulated by oxytocin or GABA at all, and very low serotonin, Autoimmune disorders just destroy you. Your body starts to destroy itself from the high, consistent levels of cortisol, the massive inflammation that creates. It destroys your body. So they spend all that wealth that they accumulated desperately seeking any kind of fix to their medical challenges. Ooh. They've usually also used alcohol to try to bring themselves down from those high-level stresses. So they're dealing with alcohol issues. They've burned a lot of their money on alcoholism. They get really drunk, and then they start making foolish choices. They're on their third wife. They didn't connect to any of them, but they're now on their third wife, so they've given away a lot of their cash. The biochemistry doesn't just shift and you say, I'm just going to be avoidant. I don't need these things I was designed to have, because it's a range of chemicals that oxytocin just doesn't make you feel loved. It releases a flood of other things through your body. So does GABA. So does serotonin. So does vasopressin. Vasopressin helps with regulation of water in your body as well. So you don't just need these chemicals for the feelings they bring. They bring so many health benefits, and without them, your health is destroyed. So yes, you will earn a lot of money. Yes, you will get to high status points. And then yes, your body will fall apart. You will feel miserable. People will gravitate to you who will take from you. And you will eventually break down and lose what you have built. And that's not to scare anybody. It's just that's the pathway that happens if you don't get to a certain point of growth and then make this transformation into long-term security and bonding and real, authentic health. You will not make that transition. You will come down hard on the other side of that hill.
Yes, you'll become your own liability at that point, which is the thing you're trying to avoid.
Well, that's exactly it. At a certain point, humans need other humans. So at a certain point, the avoidant man needs to say, you don't need 20 people. I need 2, maybe 3 people in my life that have proven themselves to be loving and honest and worthy of my trust. And then, yes, you begin that process of oxytocin bonding, vasopressin bonding, all of the hormones you're supposed to get with a core selected group of people. But if you never let your wall down, those core selected, healthy, trustworthy people will be frustrated and leave you behind. And that may be a big portion of the female audience listening right now, is she is working diligently to be that person for him. And he's currently, the word is dismissing the value that she could be bringing to the relationship because he doesn't see it. He's not a monster. He doesn't see it.
Well, we don't know what we don't know, so there's that problem.
A moment ago, you described that feeling, right, when your kid leaves. And yes, there's a withdrawal process for the oxytocin. There's a bit of a withdrawal, but it's also a crash back into what you have been living in. Yeah. And only now do you experience the pain of what you've been living in. You've just been pushing it away and ignoring it. Describe that feeling for me in depth so that people can understand what it's like to be an avoidant man who has that love ripped away again.
Oh, man. I don't think you're ready for this, man. This was not for the faint of heart, because I thought about this for a long time.
I have heard it before, but I need the people at home to hear it, because this is what love feels like for an avoidant man.
The love part is not the hard part. The love part doesn't feel like much, because I'm just not used to it. The pain of losing it, and I thought about this for a long time because I really was trying to find words to describe it. And the best I could ever come up with would be an imagery, right? I'm a visual person. I'll try to use imagery. But every time that happens, let's say Allie goes to school, she leaves, I drop her off at, 8 in the morning, 8:15, 8:30, and I come back and I go into my day, and then at 3:30 when I'm supposed to pick her up or the nanny brings her from school, or, around 4, I start getting anxious. And usually that's the point I start losing focus because I'm expecting, I need to finish my day and I need to switch into my parenting mode. And then it doesn't happen. And by about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I start getting this feeling, and the feeling makes me want to trot off into the mountains, not run, but not walk, where it's like you're too exhausted to run, but you cannot bear to walk. You kind of trot off into the mountains like some limp animal, like a broken wolf, and I want to burrow myself into a hole, like a dark cave, and pile rocks up against the entrance so that nobody can see me and nobody can be near me. And under the light of the moon, kind of slowly seeping through the cracks, what I want to do is I want to slowly tear off my skin while howling at it, gently, not loudly, not like painfully, but like, like just that anguishing thing. And I really just want to tear my skin off because it's restrictive. That's the feeling I get every single time that happens. And if that is the case, I don't particularly see it as sustainable. I never did. Like, I never really did. I'm very curious to see if other men have experienced this. Obviously, my situation is a single dad. Like, there's the switch over and whatnot in shared custody. But in some ways, maybe that's just things they're experiencing when people leave that they love, like they leave their girlfriend or they leave somebody who's attached to them. So is that a normal feeling or just weird?
So, and it's fascinating. You describe it essentially as lycanthropy, of moving backwards into the beast form. Ugh. What you're describing actually, though, is moving out of the mammalian part of the brain and more into the reptilian part of the brain.
Great.
Through dopamine and cortisol. Instead of oxytocin exists largely in the mammalian brain for that social bonding, right? If you look at a chimp, he doesn't wander off alone into the woods to just be alone for weeks and weeks and weeks. And
chimps don't howl.
Chimps don't howl. Well, they can, but they don't wander off alone because they'll be eaten and killed. But what you're describing is a chimp who has been so conditioned that being around the rest of the group is painful, so he withdraws and would rather feel the danger of being alone than feel the pain of being with the group. That is that withdrawal more into that reptilian part of the brain is what you're experiencing. And that is, unfortunately, where a lot of avoidant men live, is much more in the reptilian areas of the brain. Again, not that they're reptiles. They're not snakes, but they are living there because
more like dragons.
That's what allows them to function at the levels that they believe they have to function at. So if that's what you're experiencing, how long do you think that's sustainable in your life?
It isn't sustainable even for a week, but I keep going and going and going and going. Until I met my current girlfriend, I always questioned if I could live like that another week, or if that is going to be the week that I'm going to crash, right? That was always a persistent fear. And this was an actual fear in the back of my head, where I said, look, I have organized everything. I have my vitamin stack. I have my exercise routine. I have my, meditation. I have my religion to hold me strong. I have all of these systems. But what if this is the week where that's not enough? Because the pressure is so great, and that what if that's the week I'm going to crack? What if that's the week I come down? What if that's the week I simply cannot show up to my next meeting, or I show up to my next meeting and I cannot fulfill my obligations? I don't know how long I would live like that, and I kind of made myself a little deal, and I said, look, I'm going to have to work through that until my daughter's old enough where she doesn't need that connection from me anymore. And then I'm going to have to go do that. And I kind of hunkered down. I said, maybe 5 more years. And that was a painful self-made deal, because that's a long time. And I wasn't quite sure I was going to fulfill that, but that's kind of what I was targeting. Mm-hmm. Now, thank God decided otherwise. And I believe so wholeheartedly for good reason. But I don't understand how people can live like that for like 50 years. I don't get it.
Avoidant men are geared to survive. Even if you cognitively as a person don't want to, your entire biology is designed to keep you alive. Push one more day. I will get one more resource. One more thing will help me feel better.
You will live, but not well.
You will live, but you won't like it. Right? There's a fantastic sign for high voltage, one of the best warning signs I've ever seen, which is, warning, high voltage, this will kill you, and it will hurt the entire time you are dying. and that's really the label I want to put on avoidant attachment here is, look, all of us will die.
This is fatal.
Yeah, but it will, the quality of life is so painful that when you come out of that and experience goodness, sinking back into the quality of life you've lived in. I used to, when I was a young man, very foolish, I used to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day when I was a young man.
How could you?
At the time, I thought I was so cool. Cost me a fortune. But I remember when I quit, people used to ask me, doesn't that smell? No, I don't smell anything. I don't even taste anything. Ugh. And I remember once I quit, even the smell of it would drive me crazy. If I relapsed and smoked 1 cigarette, it was 3 days of tasting ashes and smelling ashes.
Just scrub yourself in the shower.
And that is essentially when you have that avoidant attachment. That's moving back into the animal phase, moving back into it. Like, I've been living this way. How have I been living this way?
Yeah, that's fair. I do want to highlight this fact that if we are talking simple practicality, right? If you're avoidant and you understand that life is opportunity balanced with risk and resources and obligations and purpose, you are your own liability. You're your largest liability because you know yourself really well. You're responsible for yourself, and you know you will fail. Inevitably, you will fail somewhere, sometime, and managing yourself as a risk is the hardest thing. So I really like to come back to this point you've made. Say, if you intend to follow your purpose and become your best self to fulfill your obligations to yourself, to your family, to society, to God, to everything, you actually must have a healthy body. And this is evident. This is why, a lot of when guys work out, they take care of their body. They don't drink, they don't smoke, or they do so, moderately. And they really do take good responsibility for themselves. They educate themselves. They have principles. But one of those pieces is that your neurology has to operate in a healthy fashion. Because there's going to be several things, and this is something that I've come to understand our work together, is that A, it will make you healthier and better. And I already have noticed that, even in my relationship in the last, couple of months, that I'm able to approach conversations differently. I'm able to approach even this podcast differently. I'm able to feel a greater range of emotion and absorb a much deeper level of information in our conversations.
Well, and even with the serotonin. So a lot of avoidant guys, what they do is they have and you mentioned it, the vitamin stack. They have the gym routine. They have meditation. And what they're doing is they're scraping the bottom of the barrel with serotonin. They're trying to get as much as they can every day alone when we're supposed to get it.
There's nowhere to get a serotonin. Guys cannot generate serotonin
alone,
in sufficient amounts alone.
But now that you have built some healthier attachment, not only with your daughter and with your new partner, and with some friends, have you noticed that you are not an absolute disaster of a human if you miss one day at the gym or you forget your vitamins one time, your life doesn't plunge downward?
So that I'm a disaster, but I do notice, and I'm much more religious about it. Like even this week, we're shooting the podcasts and whatnot, and I missed gym so far. Mm-hmm. I'm not dying, surprisingly. Right. I'm in a decent mood. No, I'm actually, happy enough. And that's a weird transition to me. It's a weird transition that I don't have to be religiously going to the gym, that I, don't even have to be as organized as I thought. And it's interesting enough, I'm also relying a lot more on my team this week than I ever have, and it's causing me far less stress, even though the number of projects, the difficulty of those projects, the general circumstance is arguably even higher. That's a little bit of a cognitive dissonance for me.
So there's three things, right? Reasons that apes band together. Three primary reasons. One is they can gather more resources in that way, right? They can do that. So you can have a surplus. Humans, same thing. You are experiencing a surplus of serotonin and other brain chemicals. You now have a surplus. Fantastic. Another thing that makes humans band together, safety in numbers and all of that good stuff, overlap. You said something a moment ago. Eventually, all of us are going to fail. The point of having people around you that you can trust is not, okay, fine, I don't have to watch these people like a hawk. It's when I fail, these people will step forward. They will be the ones that uphold me even. They will be the ones that can take on the tasks I can't take on. I can't take on 50 tasks. I can maybe take on 20 tasks. I need people to take these other 30. Well, who can do that? Well, these specific people I trust. So where you would fail, you can succeed as a group, but only with the people, and I'll be very clear, only with the people who are worthy of your trust. The goal here is not to get you opened up to every human being on the face of the earth. So that surplus and that overlap, those are two big pieces that you're experiencing right there that you've already talked about.
That makes sense. That makes sense from the perspective of creating contingencies, raising your quality of life, and opening yourself up to the next level. Mm-hmm. I am very focused on making sure that not only am I stepping up to the current day's challenges, but to the challenges that will be placed ahead of me in the next month, in the next year, maybe even the next decade, and to be responsible for fulfilling them. I need to learn now what I will need to know in 3 months, because if I start learning that in 3 months' time, I will be too late.
But that's what's interesting. The third point is solution sharing. So a lot of my guys that come into me who have avoidant tendencies, they have no awareness that when there's a problem, they can go to somebody else and say, hey, can I get 10 minutes of your time? Okay, here's a challenge I'm experiencing. Here's why I'm coming to you. Here's the feedback I'd like. Could you share that could you share some solutions with me? You've gone through this before. When I tell them that, their brain blows up because they're not aware that humans can even share that way and be that open about challenges. Their thought pattern has been, nobody will care. Nobody will share that with me. I have to figure it out alone. So they will go hunt for solutions, but not really with other people. And going back to your earlier point about women trying to dig open your feelings and figure out what's going on, it's not that women assume there's nothing wrong when you tell them, nothing's wrong. A woman who knows you will know something's wrong. She'll just play along with you and say, okay, nothing's fun. I get it. It's fine. But they're aware something's there. What they're trying to do is not necessarily solve the problem for you or even give you a solution. They're wanting to work diligently alongside you to help you and assist you in solving the problems you're experiencing, even if that's as your support crew. Even if that's helping lift you up so that you can reach the solution yourself, that's what they're wanting to do. So that solution sharing is that third element that most avoidant men have missed.
So not only does fixing your attachment make you a stronger and better man, but it also creates the opportunity for people to prove to you that they are actually worthy of being in your tribe and they can be trusted.
They must.
They must. So you're actually creating that opportunity. But then you're also preparing yourself for being able to bond with your children. Now, this is the hardest thing for me was because, going from that cortisol dopamine cycle and then all of a sudden having to pull a handbrake at 6 o'clock and go like, let's play unicorns. Right. It's like, shoot me now. Oh my goodness. It is just the worst feeling of self-failure that I cannot even describe. I had the feeling that I described earlier. I do not have an imagery for this one. That makes you feel like absolute dog shit. So that's a complicated one. And being able to prevent that is going to, first of all, remove a huge stressor from your life, but also allow you to build such a deeper, more meaningful connection with your kids so that they are the biggest and most important project of your life, so that you do not fail that project. So you're actually best prepared for that project, so that you can be that partner for that somebody that you're actually choosing to trust and step forward into that reality where that is possible. And then all of your weaknesses as an avoidant will become your strength. This is something I really can't stress. I'm experiencing that now. This is the coolest and absolute most awesome part of this journey, is that the hyper-focus, the protectiveness, the structuring, the scenario planning, the backups of backups of backups, the composure are just clicking in beautifully. And my girlfriend goes like, man, this is really good. You're great. And I go like, huh? She's like, this is normal. She's like, it's not normal. This is good. Like, okay, whatever you say. Cool. And it's trippy, man. It's really trippy.
And I love how you said all of that. Like your strengths as an avoidant man. And that's why men come into me very hesitantly and say, Adam, I don't want to lose my edge. I don't want to lose the part of me that's good at business. I don't want to lose the part of me that's successful. I don't want to just dump that for some sort of emotional opium den where I just sit there getting high on feelings. And absolutely, that's not the point. That would be the opposite of what I would help you achieve. That would be failure. But it's much like we talked recently with A.J. Ellison, right? The world famous bodybuilder who's won awards for his bodybuilding, and a lot of awards. And what he told us will always echo with me. He said the pathway to being a fuller, richer man in every capacity is usually begun through fitness, because fitness trains you to look at the places where you are weakest, which is what most men are refusing to do or afraid to do. They take for granted their weakness, and because they don't have solution sharing, they don't have that overlap, right? And they don't have the surplus, the brain chemistry. They don't have a mechanism for improving themselves in those mental areas, those emotional areas. They are lacking the mechanisms to improve themselves in those areas, so they simply dissociate from them and shut them down, pretend they aren't there. They hyper fixate into the areas where they're good. The goal here is to beef up the weak spots that you have, not to take away your strengths, but to make you richer and stronger and fuller in your life as a man so that you can be who you really need to be.
So this reminds me a lot of martial arts training. So I used to train and teach martial arts for about a decade. So I have a 3rd degree black belt. I have in Aikido Jiu-Jitsu. It's a Japanese version. There is a black belt that I have in Iaido, which is sword work. And then I did other martial arts over the years. During our classes, there was a stage where we would put new students and kind of intermediate students into heavily simulated environments. You know, somebody's going to punch you from the right side, not the left side. They're going to step forward with this leg, not this leg. So they could train in a restricted fashion, certain things that would later click in like a puzzle, and they could then be put into a sparring situation. So they can later on, after said sparring situation, be put into an actual combat situation. And one of the most interesting and proudest moments for me as an instructor and as a sensei has been when my kids, and some of them were, you know, they weren't kids, you know, they were like teenagers or early 20s or even mid 20s, would come to us and, you know, they say, oh, I had this, you know, this incident, like say on the subway. And then, you know, somebody pulled a knife on me or somebody grabbed me. And all of a sudden, all the things you taught me just clicked in. I didn't think. And it felt so good. Or, you know, they would go into a sparring match and then you just see them, you know, just execute the perfect combination. You say, how did you do that? Because, you know, you couldn't do that yesterday in practice. What did you do? And that flow state, the flow state where you're feeling connected, you're feeling tuned in, you're feeling powerful, but not so that's, you know, obsessive, but like in a responsible fashion. That is the feeling that I'm getting as we're rolling into this now proper, fuller biology that's now taking part in my brain. Because people talk about this all the time, like humans only use like whatever, like 20% of your brain. I know that's not really the case. Like that's not, this is more like a weird statement, that's pseudoscience. But also in reality, when you're living with avoidant attachment, you truly are using only a portion of your brain. You're receiving a very limited amount of information. There is nothing wrong with that for a period of time. But are you going to live like that forever is a great question, right? And let's come back, and this is, I'm just going to really point this out and kind of laugh at myself. The beginning of the conversation started with, how does a woman know when an avoidant man loves her? And this was a perfect example of the conversation, because we didn't talk about that. I don't care. This is probably the majority of the frustration that the women are experiencing, because they go, how do I know I love you? And then what ensues is an hour-long discussion about biology, neurology, responsibility, parenting, experiences, psychology, anything but the topic at hand, because we cannot properly understand it. I would love to hear this from the girls in the audience and the women in the audience. How many times have you had a discussion like this where you go to your avoidant partner and you say, hey, I have a quick question for you, and then it turns into this, and by the end you're like, I'm going to kill you because you've answered nothing. You've justified yourself. You talked about yourself the whole time because you think you're going to prove something or fix something, and this is not what I need. You know, I love to hear how many people have experienced this, because I can understand the frustration, but I also want to use this conversation to explain how this actually happens and why. Because really, to come back to the purpose of the question, how do you know that an avoidant man loves you? Several things. They're spending time with you, as opposed to going to the gym, as opposed to, you know, doing something more productive with their life, in their own opinion. They're inserting you into their worldview as a point of major responsibility. They're saying, I will care and provide for you, and now you're in my list of priorities, and now I'm adjusting my internal structures and financial plans to provide and secure for you. They're trying to explain themselves. So as you may remember from the beginning of this conversation, you know, I said if somebody comes to me and says, well, you're afraid, I would say, well, screw you. I got no time for this. They make time for you. They go into these long discussions because they're trying to figure this out. Those are 3 signs that an avoidant man loves you. And, in my perspective, what else is there?
Well, isn't it fascinating that during this whole conversation, you've given me your time. You've helped explain yourself to me. That's exactly it. Does that mean you love me?
Yes, I do. I love you, Adam.
But this is it. An avoidant man is going to give you what he values most, which is his resources, himself, his context. Context. Did he stop and explain context to you to be understood by you? Again, keep in mind that the belief with avoidant man is that it's almost pointless to explain yourself to most people, because most people, what are they going to use that information for? They're either going to use it against you in some way and be a jerk later, or they're going to completely disregard it because they just don't.
Because they're idiots.
Because they're idiots. It doesn't matter to them. So if he stops and tries to explain and has that context with you, that's one of the number one things I work with avoidant men and say, look, explain context from a solution-focused view. Give them this context. It shows love to them. And when they do it, boom, it feels so much better. But is he spending that time? Is he spending those resources? If he's with you and you're in year 5, then understand that his dopamine with you has probably run its course and he's probably not feeling great with you, but something is keeping him with you where he likes you. He wants to be with you. He is investing in you. Even if he doesn't yet believe you are fully trustworthy, you are the most trustworthy of all untrustworthy people in the world. And
which
he
is
knows,
all of them.
Which is a lot. And he knows and understands you. So of all 7 billion people on this planet, he distrusts you the least. And that is a beginning place.
Yes.
That is a beginning place for love.
I want to add this. So this is all well and nice, and it's a good chat and lovey-dovey nonsense, Adam. Mm-hmm. However, what's the next step? This is always something I always ask myself, is what's the next step? Mm-hmm. And I'd like to talk about the next step for men and for women. And if you can cover the women's side, I'm going to take a stab at the men's side, and you correct me if I go off kilter. As a man, if you are avoidant and you want to stop living like this, what you should do is to sit down and figure out what is going to be your checklist for stopping this nonsense. It's totally fine to have a checklist. What are your principles? What are your goals? What's the timeline? What things have to happen? Like, write it down in as minute detail as necessary and as possible so that you yourself can build yourself a path to a solution. I did this with Annalise, my girlfriend. Basically what we did is that for the first month of our relationship, we wrote back and forth because it was long distance, and we wrote back and forth essays about principles, about values, about dreams, about alignment, about things that we would like to do together, about our timeline, about our expectations. And that gave me a tremendous feeling of peace, because when I actually came to see her, a lot of these anxieties were already resolved and they didn't need to be talked about in the moment, where I could actually focus on experiencing the serotonin as opposed to shutting it down because I had to go through my checklist. That really helped me. That really helped her. It really helped us expedite the relationship, helped me step over that boundary. And the writing is actually the nicest part because it actually gave me time to think. And we were writing 2 to 4 page essays a night. They're dense. We got into everything, psychology, philosophy, you name it, it was there, which was really cool. And when I was introducing Annalise to my daughter, what I actually did was I actually had Ellie write out a list of things that she needed to experience in order for her to be comfortable with, us taking the next step, to the dating stage, to whatnot. And she literally wrote a checklist. And, we didn't, I didn't get her to share that with Annalise. I actually got her to, just say, look, do it your own way. And she wanted to keep it very private. And as, that kind of time went by, a couple of days went by, and they went through that checklist, she checked everything off. And last night specifically, literally this happened last night, we were having, dinner upstairs, and then Ellie takes Annalise by the hand and says, I need to tell you a secret. And they go for a walk, and I wasn't involved in that walk, which was a great comfort to me. And then they go for a walk, and then for what Annalise told me later, and then this is what Ellie also told me, right? They both did, which is a great sign of safety. She said, well, I had this checklist to make sure you were good, and now it's there, and I accept you, and I would like us to, spend time together, and I'd like you to stay longer, and all of these good things happened. And then when we sat down, we talked about it at the very end of the evening, she said, I'd like to make a new checklist together as a unit, as a family, as an entity. And, I understand that, this isn't, us getting married tomorrow type of thing. There is still a path, but now this path opened up. And this is for a kid who went through a divorce, who lived through separate homes, who's had obviously some challenges in life. She did the same thing that I did. And as we know, attachment does come from childhood. So what does this tell you, Adam? Is this good advice from men to follow?
Absolutely. For men and women. So what you did was you went through what I call the 4 levels of trust. Ooh. You built a framework for how and when to trust people. That's what avoidant men and women are missing, is how do I learn who I can trust and who I can't? That's ultimately the fundamental question they're trying to answer. And that's the number one thing that they must learn to heal, if you want to use the word heal, or just even change.
Repair.
To repair. To simply become more than what you are at this moment, is a framework for trusting other people that is exclusive enough that the vast majority of people will be filtered out, because that is correct and proper. It is right and just, as we say, to filter out the vast majority of people who will not be worthy of your trust, not necessarily because they're bad, but maybe you're incompatible. You need the proper filtering so that when people make it through all of those, you are certain that this is the right person for you, so that you can choose to let down that barrier and choose to invest all the way, so that you aren't left running into the forest, hiding in a cave, ripping off your skin and howling in anguish, right?
Mountains.
Fear is the anticipation of pain. That's what fear is. I am anticipating pain. It's not that avoidant men are cowards. They are anticipating overwhelming pain if they open up to others. We need a framework to make sure that they are not going to expect and experience overwhelming pain at the hands of other people who filtered in incorrectly. And so women out there, same process. Build a filtering process for your relationship. Work with him and explain that to him. Now, keep in mind, fairness is the number one challenge that avoidant men are looking to resolve. Will you be fair with him? Or are you going to push on him in horrible, uncontrollable ways that will take from him? Will you be fair? Build a framework for fairness and for establishing and maintaining trust. Build that. It's called conflict resolution, by the way. Build those skills, and you can guide him into genuine fulfillment and love in your relationship. He will be desperate to marry you at that point.
That makes sense. And it seems to work, which is even better. So I can at least recommend it based off my own experience. So this is something that both men and women should do. This is the path to fixing and building a relationship with somebody who's avoidant and,
A relationship between humans is only a relationship when there are clear frameworks for trust. Otherwise, you are just two people throwing emotions at each other, and that's not a relationship. That's a binge.
And just to end on this note, you don't really have a choice, right? You can choose to live in a binge as a man, but eventually you will slip up. And I have slipped up in the past where I got close to people I shouldn't have gotten close to in moments of weakness and for sometimes extended periods of time, sometimes very short periods of time, but that still hurt a lot. And it really sucked during and after. Right? That's the thing that really people need to understand. This is not particularly an option. You either have to scale yourself down and choose to live in ascetic misery, or you must learn how to fix this and build and grow. Like, there really is no middle ground, right? So learning how to step forward into something that you don't know is a core aspect of the human experience. And being uncomfortable and afraid during that time is a normal reaction. But not being trapped in it, not complaining about it, not building a reality where you're already making yourself a failure and a victim is the key part. So I love this conversation, Adam. This was fantastic. As you can see, I Try to give no quarter.
Let's fight more. This was fun.
Let's fight more. Let's go outside.
Everyone in
Let's
the
fight
audience,
and roll.
in the audience, do you enjoy it when we kind of go back and forth this hard? I would love to hear from you because I enjoy it.
I love it.
This is our steak dinners right here. When we have dinner together, we go this hard.
Yeah, and the tables around clear out.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So if you enjoy this, say more of the fighting.
That's
Comment
right.
more of the fighting.
Fight. I love that because you know what? These are discussions that people aren't having because people are afraid, because people don't trust. It's like, screw this. Let's argue. Let's debate. Let's find common ground. Let's find the answers, because what's really hinging in the balance are happiness of families. These are your lives. This is your health. This is your success. This is your responsibility. For those who are religious, this is your soul, because you cannot be good as a Christian, as a Muslim, as a Hindu, as anybody without having some connection to love. That is the only thing that drives the world. And if you don't have it, you will fail. So take that into account. Man, what a good episode. Adam?
Yep.
How do people work with you?
So if you are listening to this and you would like to fix your behavior patterns that keeping you from finding happiness, or if you're a couple that's wanting some help to understand that framework of trust and love, there's a couple ways to work with me. Go on my website, adamlanesmith.com. You are going to find my consultations on there where I can work with you individually or as a couple. You're also going to find the Attachment Circle, which is my mentorship program where you can work with me for a whole year in 100 calls together with a community that supports you. There are so many ways to do this work and build the life that you want to build. adamlanesmith.com is the best place to find me.
Love it. And on my end, you guys can find me at Andrey Korikov on Instagram. You can also check me out at veritascreative.media to see the work we do with content creators. And I also now offer private coaching. So if you'd like to work with me, and I've done a couple of things in life, and I've built content creators. I worked with Dr. Jordan Peterson. I was married to his daughter. We've had a crazy story together. We worked with Adam for ages and ages and ages. I've moved countries, like craziest things happen. And I'd love to make it available to people who actually want to go and do the best with their life. So if you'd like to work with me, send me a DM on Instagram at Andrey Korikov, and let's talk and see how we can make the world a little bit more loving and a little bit less cold.
I will say my coaching with you has helped you, but your coaching with me has helped me grow into someone who can articulate what I need to share with the world and help me do that. So many people contact me on Instagram and say, Adam, how are you growing your brand like this? Well, Andrey right here has been mentoring me through that as well. We've been taking care of each other. There's that male vasopressin bonding right
correct.
there.
And I'm very proud to have had Adam as a mentor and to continue to having him
as a client.
Be a client and also a mentee, right? So this has been a great relationship. This has actually been a great example of our vasopressin bonding slowly growing into serotonin bonding, helping me fix parts of my life that I needed fixing, but also helping Adam fix parts of his life that he needed fixing. And this is actually how things are supposed to work. That's the recreation of society and us finally stepping away from the avoidant tendencies, which both of us do have.
Oh, yeah.
And starting to create something that's secure. So this is a great journey, and I'm proud to have you on it.
After this, we're going to hug, and we're going to go eat some meat.
Sold. Thank you, guys. We'll see you on the next episode of I Wish You Knew. Comment, subscribe, share. Let's make this happen.